Hello, all praise to Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So, Jerusalem being Mystery Babylon. Well, I've done 3 videos now, and the last one I read all of them. I read a lot of scripture, and like in the first video, I put a little bit of stuff about the Masonic elements of the Supreme Court in Israel, and so since then I haven't put a lot of information up, and I've just read scripture because I think it's important to have a strong scriptural basis. I think it's the mistake a lot of people make is they might read Revelation or something and then they'll go and try to match things from the world to Revelation, whereas I think a lot of the information that we need, what we need to figure things out is largely in the Bible. I think you can figure it out. And also I think it turns off a lot of people reading a lot of scripture, and I think that's a good thing to turn away the people who aren't really serious about learning before they get too deeply into it. But I think it's the best place to learn is the Bible. If you want to learn the truth, is the Bible. So, if this is video 4, if you're video 4, I'm hoping that you've watched the other 3 videos. In this one, I'm going to do a little bit more about Freemasonry and stuff like that, because there are things that I've heard people say, and I don't necessarily have the links. Like it takes ages to find all the links to these things, and who can verify anyway what's true and what not. But there are things that I've heard people say. For example, that Freemasonry is basically based on the Kabbalah. It's pretty much the same thing, and that Freemasons want to rebuild the third temple, and that I've got a bunch of information to put together. Sort of, it makes sense to me. I'm just going to talk about it though, and then I think this is a topic where you need to do your own research to a certain extent. So I might bring some things up, and I'm going to talk about. I still have more things to read about Mystery Babylon. Like the Book of Lamentations is very good to read if you want to learn more about the identity of Mystery Babylon, because there's a lot in that book that coincides with what's in Revelation 17 and 18. But I said in the last video that I was going to do some stuff on the beast that the whore of Babylon rides. So if we go to Revelation 17 and verse 3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And then, skimming down to verse 7, there's a bit of a description of the beast from here. And the angel said unto me, Why do you marvel? I'll tell you the mystery. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. So whatever this beast is, it was at one point in time, it is not, at least when John's talking, and yet is. So it sounds like something that's died and gone away and then come back again. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. So as far as 7 mountains, there are a lot of, if you go to Wikipedia, or just type in, it'll come on Wikipedia, but there's a list of cities claimed to be built on 7 hills, and there's plenty. But interestingly, Jerusalem is one of them. And the 7 hills are Mount Scopus, Mount Olivet, Mount Corruption, Mount Ophel, the original Mount Zion, the new Mount Zion, and the hill on which Antonia Fortress was built. So there's Jerusalem is also because a lot of people say Rome is built on 7 hills. Well, there's a lot of places that are built on 7 hills, but Jerusalem also built on 7 hills. So interesting to note that. So that's the woman sitting on 7 hills. So that matches up with Mystery Babylon, the great whore being Jerusalem. But then in the next verse, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So 5 kings, and then there's 1 who currently is, and then there's 1 who's going to come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. So this was written during the Roman Empire. And I'm going to read a bit in Daniel. We'll read about it, but I'll just talk about it now. So there's 2 dreams in Daniel. Maybe we'll get to that. Or we'll just remember that at this point, there's 5 kings, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So we'll come back to that verse. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest were 10 kings. So the 10 kings thing, the 10 horns and the 10 kings, I'm putting that in the future. I don't think that's happened yet. I think that happens after the Antichrist comes, after the final system is set up. There'll be 10 kings, and there has been talk that the world is going to be divided into 10 regions, and if you search on Google, you can find that. So it's like, America is one, and like there'll be China and Australia and New Zealand, and I think a bit of South Africa was another one. And then there's 10 regions that have already been, I don't know if they will be the 10 regions, but it's a concept that has already been talked about. So in these 10 kings, they have one mind to give their power and strength to the beast, make war of the Lamb. Okay, and so the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So, I mean, we're getting back to a bit of the whore there. I wanted to focus mainly on the beast in this video, but so the horse sitting on many waters. Well, the nation of Israel was, of course, split off and distributed all around the world when they were taken by the Assyrians, I believe, and the Medo-Persians, was it? No, it would have been the Assyrians. And they were, they never came back to Israel. They were dispersed around the world. So you could say that, and the Jews as well, I guess, after Babylon. So that fits with the nation of Israel as well. But anyway, so let's read Daniel 2 and then Daniel 7 are the two bits, the two dreams that Daniel has, which are relevant to the identity of the beast. Thou, O king, so this is Nebuchadnezzar has a dream when Babylon, the Jews get taken to Judah, and the ones who are still in Israel, in Jerusalem, they get taken to Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar is the king, and he's the king of the first great empire, you might say, well, not the first great empire, well, the great empire at the time, I should say, the great empire at the time, and Daniel's a Jew who is a wise Jew. Let's just say it so we can get into it. To be brief, I should say, thou, O king, sawest, and and Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. This is Daniel's interpretation of the dream. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet. They were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron and clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath made thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and fowls of heaven, he hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kingdoms shall God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So in that, the 5 different the 5 different things: the gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then bronze and miry clay. So the gold has been identified as Nebuchadnezzar, and then after that is the silver, which has been identified as the Medo-Persian Empire, which is the empire that took over from the Babylonians. And then the bronze would be the Greek Empire, like Alexander the Great, which took over from the Medo-Persian Empire. And after that came the Romans. After the Greek Empire, the Romans ruled the world. And then the Roman Empire is still going today, except that it's not going from, it's not a single empire. It's sort of split up all over the world. And, we've got, America is part of it, and England is part of it, Germany's part of it, France is part of it, and all the different elements. There's a whole bunch of different elements all around the world. They're all pretty much part of this same empire that's still going on. And then there was the mountain, the cut without hands, that comes down and smashes the feet. Well, that'll be Jesus. God will set up his mountain. We've talked about in previous videos, like the Axis Mundi, or the high place, the high places we talked about, the places that's close to heaven. That's the places where the king of the earth, or the gods in the old days, but the high places where the ruler ruled. So there's going to be a big high mountain, and that's like symbolically or actually or both, I suppose. It's where Jesus is going to rule from. So he's going to smash the current empire. So we've identified 5 empires there, and we heard in the that previous in Revelation is talking about the seven kings, and 5 have fallen. Well, here we've got 5 kings, and 4 of those 5 kings have fallen, because we're still in the later bit of the Roman Empire. So if there are 7 kings, that means that must be 2 kings that came before. I postulate that Egypt has surely to be one of them, and perhaps the Nimrod's kingdom before that would be another one, and that would come up to 7. And I'm not. We're getting into a bit of speculative territory here. I've thought about these things. There is information that I've already posted that sort of lends credence to this, but it would make sense to me if you've got 7 kingdoms and 5 have fallen. Well, that would be, I suppose, Nimrod's and the Sumerian, I suppose, and the Egyptian, and then the Babylonian, and then the Medo-Persian, and then the Greek, and then the Roman Empire would be the last 2, except the Roman Empire is sort of split. So then you've got, so it's sort of split. And that would be the beast. To say the current empire now would be the beast, that 7th empire. But then you've got the 8th one, and the 8th is of the 7, and the 8th is the Antichrist kingdom. And if we go to Revelation 9 and verse 11, I was going to read the whole bit. But just verse 11, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, and in Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. So this is the angel that comes and lets out the locusts. Your star fell from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given a key of the bottomless pit. He opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and so it goes on. But the angel over that is called Apollyon. So Apollo is identified with Alexander the Great, and I made some videos on that where he's strongly identified with Alexander the Great. So I would guess, and that also seems to be, Apollo is associated with the sun, and a lot of have gone into the pagan religions, and they often worship the sun god. And there's an association with Apollo and the religions of the day. The Freemasons seem to have something to do with Apollo, the worship of Apollo, which I haven't gone into that much, but it's sort of speculative territory here, because I don't know what the plan of all the secret societies are. But as a theory, so those would be, I would say, the 7 kings that exist. They would be Babylon, Egypt, Sumeria, Egypt, Babylon, the Medo-Persian, Greek, Rome, and then the current version of the Roman Empire we have now, which would be the iron mixed with the miry clay. And then there'll be the angel of the bottomless pit come up, which would be Apollyon, and then Apollo would be associated with the Greek Empire, and that sort of fits with the secret societies. So that's where I'm going with that. And if we read Daniel 7, it's got a bit about the beast in Daniel 7, so we'll get a bit more information here. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions upon his head, of his head upon his bed, and then he wrote the dream, and he told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. So the great sea, we've been told in Revelation as well that the sea is the people, the multitudes of the people, the sea. So the four winds are blowing on the multitude of people. And the four winds, wind is associated with spirits as well, and Satan is associated with the pits of the power of the air. I don't know if that's a direct link there, but so we've got four spirits, you might say, having an impact on the multitude of people. And there is also potentially, once again, we're in speculative territory here because we're getting into like spiritual stuff here. So I'm talking, I'm making links, but I don't know if this is true. This is just speculation, but there may be an association there with the four angels in the river Euphrates, which I don't think I read that in Revelation, but there's a bit in Revelation where there's the four angels that have been kept in the river Euphrates for the year, the hour, the day, the month, and the year, to, I think it's kill a third of men or kill a quarter of men, and then there's the four horsemen of the apocalypse that's mentioned earlier. I think that's in the 6th chapter of Revelation as well. So I don't know if there's a link there between the four winds. There's also the four angels that go to the four corners to gather the elect as well. So I don't know if I don't know which of these is a link, but anyway, just pointing that out. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. First was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and said unto it, and said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. So there's the iron, sort of associated with Rome, I think. Like these beasts seem to be similar to the first dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, the dream in Daniel chapter 2. So the lion would be associated with Babylon, and the and so on. But I'm not sure if that's true. And strong exceeding, and it had great teeth, and it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, from whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down. Oh, sorry. So that bit there in verse 8, it's a bit like the 10 horns in Revelation 17. And yeah. Hold on. Okay, so it's hard to put all the pieces together. I guess I'd always get lost in trying to identify all these things because everything spreads out and there's so much information. And so I'm just going to put aside that Daniel bit for the moment. But just to point out that in Daniel 7, there's some more stuff that's worth reading if you want to get more into the identity of the beast. But I just wanted to point out, I guess, some of the more real world as in extra biblical, outside of the Bible, links, bits of information. So the link between Kabbalah and Freemasonry. So Kabbalah is sort of a Jewish, I guess I should pull up a Wikipedia about it. It's a Jewish, I guess the Jewish mystical tradition, let's say. So Kabbalah is an esoteric method, discipline, and school of thought in Judaism. A traditional Kabbalist in Judaism is called a Mekubal. The definition of Kabbalah varies according to the tradition and aims of those following it, from its religious origin as an integral part of Judaism to its later adaptations in Western esotericism. Jewish Kabbalah is a set of esoteric teachings meant to explain the relationship between God, the unchanging, eternal, and mysterious Ein Sof, the infinite, and the mortal and finite universe, God's creation. It forms the foundation of mystical religious interpretations within Judaism. It's basically Jewish magic, or Jewish paganism, you might say, or it's like the mystery religion that's associated with the Bible, or the Old Testament specifically, I suppose. So, yeah, there are links between Kabbalah and the Freemasons, and there are links between Freemasons. Freemasons, of course, being people who build temples or build buildings, but the buildings that they build, the Masonic lodges, they're temples, they're religious institutions, let's say, and they read the King James Bible. So they have their mystical interpretation of the King James Bible and have all of their magic associated with it. And there's a link between Kabbalism and Freemasonry. And I'm just going to read some links here. There's a website. There's a website here. I'll put it on the screen. And just some quotes about the Kabbalah from Freemasons. So Kabbalah is the key of the occult sciences, is Albert Pike. I've talked about Albert Pike before. Very influential Freemason. And the Kabbalah is indeed the essence of Freemasonry. It's Helena Blavatsky. So Helena Blavatsky of the Theosophical Society. Freemasonry is Kabbalism in another garb. The Jewish mysteries are the source of our present tradition, of which was carried to Rome and thence passed down through the collegia into the medieval guilds, finally emerging in the 18th century in the speculative rituals of the craft degrees, in the Holy Royal Arch and the degree of Mark Master Mason, and in those of other emblems and ceremonies. The whole basis of our theory is the Kabbalah, Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, very influential, very evil man, very influential on the culture of these times. Influenced a lot of musicians, for example, like the Beatles in the, what's it called, Sgt. Pepper. That album has Aleister Crowley on the front. And a lot of the bands in the 60s, but going even further up, very influenced. Our culture is very influenced by Aleister Crowley, unfortunately. The theories of Kabbalism are inextricably interwoven with the tenets of alchemy, Hermeticism, Rosicrucianism, and Freemasonry. It's Manly P. Hall, who we've talked about before. In the Kabbalah, we find fragments of the symbolic knowledge, which was once the exclusive property of the initiates. So close are the analogies between certain of the doctrines of the Kabbalah and those of earlier degrees of Masonry, that it has been supposed that Kabbalistic students were responsible for the introduction of speculative Masonry into our modern craft. The student of occultism does not hold this view, for he knows that our speculative rituals belong in substance to a far older past than the 18th century, and that they perpetuate the tradition of the Jews, who derived it from the mysteries of Egypt. He sees in the Kabbalah a written and esoteric portion of certain teachings belonging to the Jews, though handed down. So of course we know, the Jews, or the nation of Israel, they existed in, I guess Abram initially came from but in the Babylonian sort of area, and then the Jews went into exile into Egypt, and so they were around Egypt for 400 years, and then after that they were amongst the people of the land of Canaan. Then they were pagans, basically, the Canaanites, and then they were exiled to Babylon, and the northern kingdom exiled to Assyria, and then spread around the world. But the Jews, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, and the people who were left in Jerusalem, the southern kingdom, they went to Babylon. And basically, as I understand it, they've sort of picked up the mystery religions from all over the place, and they now have the Kabbalah, which is influenced by Egypt, but the other mystery religions as well, Babylon as well. The Kabbalah may be defined to be a system of philosophy which embraces certain mystical interpretations of scripture and metaphysical and spiritual beings. Much use is made of it in the advanced degrees, and the entire rites have been constructed on its principles. Masonry cannot be fully appreciated or understood without the knowledge of the Kabbalist tree of life. All Masonic associations owe to it, Kabbalah, their secrets and their symbols. True philosophy is known and practiced by Solomon. Is the basis on which Freemasonry is found, Albert Pike. So as far as Solomon, of course, was given wisdom by God, and in the occult, like there's some occult books, like the Lesser Keys of Solomon, or the Keys of Solomon, and sort of books about demons, basically, and summoning demons and controlling demons and that type of thing. And there's a story that supposedly Solomon had a ring which was able to control demons, and he was influenced by, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and the story in the Bible is that he was influenced by them to go over to their religions. But then the story, if you go into the occult, not that I've gone into the occult, but I've heard such things, he was involved in a lot of that stuff. And yeah, so Solomon is a name that definitely comes up in the occult. According to Talmudic legends, Solomon understood the mysteries of Kabbalah. He was also a necromancer, being able to summon demons. Well, there we go, Manly P. Hall. Freemasonry is founded upon the activities of this secret society of Central European adepts by the studious Mason, whom the studious Mason will find to be the definite link between the modern craft and the ancient wisdom. The outer body of Masonic philosophy was merely the veil of this Kabbalistic order, whose members were the custodians of the true arcanum. Manly P. Hall again. The basis of the Western occultism of medieval is the Kabbalah of the medieval Hebrew rabbis. The great Kabbalistical association known in Europe under the name of Masonry appeared suddenly in the world when the revolt against the Church had just succeeded in dismembering Christian unity. And Masonry is a search after light. We've talked about the light and Lucifer. That search leads us directly back, as you see, to the Kabbalah. Albert Pike again. And the quotes go on. I won't read them all. Let it scroll down the screen a little bit. But as you can see, there's a link there between the Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mysticism, and Freemasonry. And I showed you in the first video in this series some of the Freemason images, the idols, you might say, in Jerusalem, and the Supreme Court in Israel, in Jerusalem, is a very Masonic building. And I showed you some pictures, but it's worth looking into it yourself, because there are descriptions that come along with some of the things. Like I can show you some pictures, but unless they're explained, it doesn't make sense. So if you want to look more deeply into that, the Supreme Court in Jerusalem, in Israel, it's a very Masonic building, with a pyramid and everything. So there does seem to be a link, I guess is the point. There's a link between the Freemasons, which you might say is one of the mystery religions, the secret religions that's behind the beast, you might say. And then you've got Kabbalah, which would be the Jewish, like the whore, the whore version. It sort of goes in as well with the whore of Babylon, because there's been traditions from all the regions around it, the peoples from who the Jews interacted with, gave to the Jews their secrets, I guess. The Jews adopted them. And that's sort of what God's saying here, that they're whores. They've taken up all these other mystical traditions, and that would be the Kabbalah, as I understand it. And then the beast has the similar traditions. The beast, the Freemasonry, I should say, they also want to build the third temple, and they've got their own versions of things. But from the QAnon stuff I've talked about previously, you can see that if you look into that the Q people really don't like the Jews. And so it seems to be the case that, and sort of a Nazi association with Trump and with the Freemasons and that type of thing, there seems to be a butting of heads, or like the beast, like what's coming seems to not be pro-Jewish. It seems to be very anti-Jewish. So, there's that bit in Revelation where the beast is going to destroy the whore. Yeah, verse 16. 10 horns which thou sawest, the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So what we've got basically is God's going to punish the Jews, the nation of Israel. He's going to bring as I understand what's going to happen, he's going to bring all of the people of the world around to attack Israel. But so the purpose of doing so is, on one hand, to punish Israel, but it's on the other hand to bring everybody together so that he can also punish the world and punish everybody at the same place, at the same time and place. All the world's going to be, this is my interpretation, it's going to be in or Jerusalem or around Israel, all sort of attacking, and then God will have his remnant there. He'll be punishing the whore, who is it? His people, the whorish people who have gone and prostituted themselves out. And he's also going to punish the world, all in one spot. Will all be highly visible. Everybody will see it. Everybody who's still alive will see this big thing happen right at the end. God pouring out his judgment, pouring out his wrath on the earth. So that's basically what I see happening. And I don't know if this has been a good video or not. It's a bit messy trying to talk about this subject. So, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the beast, because the woman is riding the beast. So you can say that you can sort of see how with the link between Kabbalism and Freemasonry, you can sort of see the behind the scenes, the more secretive stuff. You can see how the I don't know what this. I don't know if it's saying it's the Jews. I don't know if it's the right thing to say. The nation of Israel, like God's people have sort of ridden the world, or ridden upon the world system, let's say, or the world system has used them, but you can sort of, as I read the verses, this is sort of what's making sense to me, is what's happening. You've got the nation of Israel riding on top of the beast, profiting off the beast, but then the beast is going to turn on her and make her desolate. And so that's what we're seeing. So I hope this hasn't been too much of a mess of a video. I'll make more videos on this subject. I have a little bit more to read on the Whore of Babylon. But anyway, may Jesus bless you and lead you to the truth. Amen.